You ever heard the term God don't bless no mess? I really didn't really know what that meant, because I was always taught that God is always present, God is always there. But what life has been showing me is that God is omnipresent. God is everywhere, always, all the time. God is the baseline of everything. However, I don't believe that God is in the deviations from the baseline. The other day, I was reading 1 Kings in the Bible, and I was learning about Jezebel, because she was like, Jezebel was the op, but I had to figure out like what happened. Why was Jezebel killing off all the prophets? But see, Elijah was really scared of Jezebel, because Jezebel was like wild with the murders. And so Elijah runs, and he's like looking for the voice of God. If I'm saying this wrong, let me know. But he's looking for the voice of God, and he goes to all these things happen, and like he still can't hear from God. It's a fire, it's like the earth moved, like all this stuff happened to Elijah, and he still couldn't hear from God. And it makes me think of my life, because when I say that I did not leave this lifestyle that I left because of God, it does not mean that God didn't have his hands on me. But God was not involved in my day-to-day. If God is protection, or the energy of God, or whatever you call God, if you believe that that energy is protective, sometimes the protection is hands off. The protection is like, I'm not going to save you from yourself, but I will save you from the ways in which the enemy shows up around you. So I'm not going to save you for yourself, but I'm going to let you encounter some of these things, but you also not going to get hit by a Mack truck. Again, I don't know if this stuff makes sense for anybody else, but this is how I'm sitting with it at this time. So God was not in the details. The devil was in the details. And I'm not using this in like dogmatic terms. I'm not saying the devil is this person or this thing or this entity with horns and that's not how I'm speaking. But what I am saying is that if Christ is a consciousness, then so is the devil. It's a consciousness. And taking the devil out of the framework of religion, but understanding the essence of it is like operating in your lower nature versus your higher nature. All of the things that created a way for me to exist in that space for so long. I was with women for 20 years. Like I said in another video, feel very contrary to who I am. This morning I got up and read Psalms 119, 25 through 28. And it was powerful to me, but it set off a chain of events for me emotionally, spiritually, and mentally that I have had to sit with myself all day, because it feels like something just opened up and flooded this morning in my Bible study. And righteous living and clean living are the only route to really understanding your own divinity. And when I think about living outside of the will of God, I know that some of you are going to hear my conversation here and feel like that I'm being religious, and I'm not. This is not dogma. This is dogma-free deliverance. This is not framework of religion. However, I am speaking from my personal experience, and I'm speaking from a space of religion being where I come from. But on the other side of life experiences, that's when the religiosity falls away, and you realize that this is really a spiritual path, and that whatever your religious foundation is, there's only one true God, and there's only one truth. We have all, as humans, found different paths to that truth, But the truth is, there's only one truth and one God. So I'm speaking through the lens of what my perception of that has been, and where I'm arriving back at righteous living, clean living. I did not realize how many bad habits I had acquired throughout my experiences with women, all of my relationships, every single last one. I was not the most tidy person, and I'm being transparent about that because it's a vulnerable spot for me. And I used to think like, man, like this is terrible, like I'm so messy. And I began to accept it as a part of my condition. My condition being that I'm flawed, that I have experienced this trauma, that I have gone through all these things. I framed it in that, like, okay, I'm messy because maybe I'm anxious, or maybe I'm suffering from depression. And the thing is, people suffer from anxiety and suffer from depression and have all these different things that require medication and extra help and this and this. But like I think about a lot of things, that's not the biggest, like, there's more people that doesn't apply to than it does. I feel like a lot of us could just use therapy and help. And by help, I mean help from our community. Like if we had, I was talking to somebody about interpersonal relationships versus, independent relationships where you don't feel like you need anyone. Or individual, I guess would be the better term. But I say that to say, I was not a person who was necessarily lazy, and I'm not necessarily messy. I actually prefer things very orderly and neat and minimal. However, I was not living in alignment with what I felt was God in general. So it is not possible to be existing one way here and it doesn't impact you over here. I'm living out of order in general. So these smaller tasks which create order they're not easy, but it's kind of like you're like, well, this is just my condition. You accept this immensely flawed nature as your condition. So because I'm living out of order with women, and I'm not in a structured environment where there is a clear head and there's a clear neck, and that's how things should function for me. It is not for anybody else unless it's for you. But in my mind, because I'm not operating in order that way, it's very difficult to make all of these other decisions. And care about them, I guess, is a more apt term, because if I'm like, whatever, then I'm like, whatever. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. And I don't know how to make this make more sense. This is me just sharing. But now that I have transitioned my life, now I feel the presence of God. Now I feel this higher spiritual calling in a powerful way. Now alignment makes sense. The things that I see here, I see all the way down and I see across. The same way I am horizontally, I am vertically. My vertical integration is creating a horizontal experience that makes sense. And so when I say God don't bless no mess, and I understand it now, God was waiting at the door for me to open the door. But I had to open the door. God was on the other side. What I learned from was actually the absence of a thing. My spiritual relationship, however I had cultivated it over time, however I had decided I was experiencing God, that at the end of my marriage was just completely void. I didn't have any sort of spiritual anything going on, and I felt it. It is a feeling. Absence and void is also an experience. It's also a feeling. Man, it was so difficult because I didn't have an altar anymore. I didn't have all these things that really gave me stability through some of the challenges that I had over my lifetime. I've always had a connection with some sort of spiritual connection with some sort of higher power. I've always had it. In my exhaustion, was feeling out of order, I found that God was not there anymore for me. Not for me, but like I wasn't experiencing God anymore in any capacity. And I had to really reevaluate, like, damn. Because I would find myself thinking like, oh, well, I can just have this, whatever I'm eating that's not good for me, because whatever, I'm just figuring life out. You know, I'm going with the flow. And flow state, we'll get into that another time, but I'm going with the flow. So I'm going to eat this thing. I'm going to do this thing that I know probably isn't best for me. So, or I'm going to engage in this behavior. I'm going to do this, this, and this, because there's no vertical structure. There's no connection with the higher power that keeps you accountable to your vessel, let alone how you showing up in the world. So when you think of all these religious beliefs or paths that required certain dietary restrictions or cleanliness standards or whatever the case may be, I am having a real-time experience with the desire to live in that clean and righteous of a way. I understand now why Muslims pray before they or wash their hands and feet and things before they pray, because the connection with God that I'm having is so pure that I want nothing clogging up that connection. And the reason I'm experiencing it is because I'm in this vessel and I get to experience God through this flesh, through this body. In order for that connection to be pure, I have to be eating a certain way. I have to be getting certain amounts of sleep, not just because that's what replenishes the vessel, but because that's how you communicate with God, through dreams. And that's how you get up early enough to where you're up between 4 and 6 if you need to be for prayer and meditation. Everything means something. And now I understand that is how I've been able to use both religion and spirituality to my advantage at this point, because the religion part is to give you the structure and the instructions. The spirituality is for your interpretation and how you move through the world with it, but the structure is the structure. So you might not eat meat, but some people don't eat meat, some people don't eat pork, but then there's other people who they can eat the meat if it's clean this way. Like, I get to experience God however I want to experience God, using whatever language I have and whatever language I wish to learn. But the bottom line is, this connection that I am feeling at this point in my life is just, I could not have had this prior to me leaving a space that wasn't for me to be in. I am seeking to be vertically integrated spiritually, because I recognize that is going to change the nature of every horizontal dynamic that I encounter. But I find that there's nothing I believe that could have happened on the prior side of life for me that would have created this. This is different. This is different. It is my singleness that I'm experiencing that's allowing me to dig into myself like this. It is me dating and having those experiences that give me more insight. Relations are reflections. Relationships are reflections. That is what they should be used for. And eventually you get closer and closer to yourself to where you become one. And it's no longer a reflection. It's actually an experience that you're having of this other person. But if you keep your mirror clear and you encounter other mirrors, you'll always see yourself, whether they see themselves or not. And that is what I have been doing. I have been seeing myself clear enough to say, this ain't for me. This ain't how it's supposed to be. This doesn't feel good. It's okay to keep your mirror clear and keep it pushing. That is how I'm experiencing singleness. I'm single, but I'm having a great time. I'm single and I'm dating, and I'm experiencing myself through all of these different reflections, and it's so cool. But I say that to say, living a righteous and clean life will keep your mirror clean and clear. And by clean living, I mean literal clean living, like staying tidy and eating well and drinking enough water, and like the way that I feel when I walk into the world now, I feel like I'm able to commune with God differently. because I am seeking a righteous life. I am living a righteous life every day in the ways that I can, which is pure honesty with the world. I told a lie the other day, and I didn't have to, and I don't know why I did it. I felt a slight bit, maybe it was a trigger of like, ooh, if I say this is going to cause conflict. It was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. And there was a consequence from it, and I felt it immediately. But out of the consequence came some revelation and wisdom that makes me realize even my flawed state is still helping me to operate in a righteous way, because the lesson I got from the consequence, I don't know what I could have done. I don't know how else that would have came to me. But I say that to say righteousness is not perfection, and clean living is not perfection, but the insight from your missteps is still different when you are living righteous and living clean. I would not have these downloads in this way and the ability to upload them so fast if I weren't operating from a pure state, and I keep purging and purifying so that the turnaround is quick on the lesson. Should I have a misstep, which I will, because I'm human. But I just wanted to say that that's what I feel like it means when they say God don't bless no mess. God ain't in that. God is outside of it, holding you, protecting you, and God is waiting on you to get outside of it. God cannot exist within the realm of your shit. And that is what I've learned. And I'm just clear on what my shit was and what it is, and probably could tell you what it might turn into. But the beauty that I have now, the lesson that I have in this moment, is that God is always on the other side waiting on me. And so what I now need to do, if I understand this way, what I now need to do is just quit putting myself in shit that puts me outside of God's presence. And that is where I am. I am firmly back in my own experience. This is just what I feel and how I'm experiencing it. I am now back in the loving presence of God in a personal way. I'm not only needing God as a protector or a provider. I need God in the other ways that God exists, and I'm experiencing God in the other way. We shouldn't always need God. We shouldn't just need God when it's rough, or when I'm praying to get out of something, or when oh God, I need you now. Like, that's what God is for too. But God is so vast and big. There are so many things, so many functions of God. And part of what I'm experiencing is my reconnection with God's word in the way that I was raised through the Bible. However, I'm experiencing God's word through the lens of my experiences, which makes it completely different. It is beautiful to connect with God without needing a go-between. Like, it's just me and God right now. So God is always present. God is always there, but God is not in the midst of your mess. God is standing right there with his hands like, come on, baby, I got you. But you gonna have to go through your shit. And that is what I've learned. I don't blame nothing on the devil. I don't blame nothing on God. It's me. And how I experience it turns it into a personal heaven or hell. So I'm going to keep doing what I got to do to live a righteous and clean life. I'm going to keep doing what I got to do to stay close to God and connected to God in a personal way, so I can experience the heaven. And I'm in paradise with God right now. So that was a quick little something that was on my spirit this morning. I've had an amazing day. I feel incredibly clear about so much. I feel directly tuned into God, and I'm grateful. And I just hope that this word lands on you the way it landed on me. I did my best to explain it. I love you. I have no judgment about anything. If you hear me talk about something, it's purely because it's mine. And I don't need to put it on nobody. It being mine is enough for me. But I pray that something I said touches you. And that you have a beautiful day. And bye.